Hi, I'm Nino Gonzalez, and welcome to another edition of Making Sense. Well, in the last episode, we were talking to John Romero from Romero Consulting, and he was glad enough to stick around and do another show with us. And now we're going to talk a little bit about small business topics. Well, thank you for joining me again on the show and taking time of your busy day to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, one of the things that interested me in the last show that we were talking about was getting into small businesses.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about what is it that you do and some of the services that you provide to small businesses.
Our business, we've been in business now for over 25 years as far as what we do. And some of the services we provide, everybody says, okay, yeah, you do income taxes. Well, we also do payroll. We do bookkeeping. We actually just do regular counseling and consulting for businesses of how do I set up a business? Do I need to have payroll? Do I set myself up as an LLC, a corporation, a sole proprietor? Everybody has a whole bunch of questions, and I have an idea to start a business, but they don't know where to take it from there.
Correct.
And so that's kind of what we do. From the very beginning, if you don't even know what to do, come in and let's talk about it. Go to the SBDC and talk about it. But there's avenues for you to say, what do we need to do? How do I get this idea moving forward in a business structure?
Right. And you mentioned the SBDC, that of course that was referring to the Small Business Development Center,
Yes.
which is located here at the college, and you're also an instructor with them, teaching on a variety of courses.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned LLC. I think a lot of people in the audience might not be familiar with that term. They might have seen it
Yes.
after a business name, but what does LLC mean?
What an LLC is, a limited liability company. And the reason it's really gained popularity in about the last 10 to 15 years is because of the advantages you have when you set your corporation up as an LLC. And it's an advantage you get through the tax system, whether it's the IRS or whatever it is you're doing. And so what I try to do is explain to people the differences between the way the IRS, the way they treat your businesses, and how you have to behave in the world of the IRS as a business owner, and the structure of your entity, as opposed to the way the state of Texas and the legal formation
Correct.
of your business. And so it goes hand in hand, but it makes sense that you speak to somebody that knows what they're doing and they have experience setting these up. And so they make sure that you're set up properly before you even say, I'm ready to run my first sale.
Right, and we mentioned about an LLC. There's also LLPs,
Yes.
limited liability partnerships. And the way I like to define these are hybrids, right? Basically between a partnership and a corporation, or a sole proprietorship and a corporation. It gives you some of the advantages
Yes.
of being corporate, but you have some of the tax advantages, as you were mentioning.
Exactly, and a lot of it has to do with, for the most part, whether it's an LLC, LLP, LP, the state of Texas has, I believe it's something like 18 different designations
Really?
out
Wow.
there. And so what I try to explain to people when I write up and we talk about it and try to get an idea of what a business owner wants to do, what I try to figure out is which avenue makes sense for them as they start to go down the path and as they'll grow their business. Because most of those advantages or disadvantages have to do with the owner or the shareholders, with their salary, with their draws, with the benefits that they expect to take out of the business. And so those are a lot of the things that are addressed when you're setting up these types of businesses.
And I think you also have to look at the wealth of the individual,
Yes.
see how much they have to protect, and if there's any need to protect those personal assets that they have.
Exactly, exactly. And let the state of Texas, along within their business structure laws, allow them to protect that business individually, as opposed to what you have on the personal side. And so it allows it to separate the two.
Right. So you give them information regarding what type of business structure they should be, or what best fits
Bingo.
their needs, because I'm sure all of this costs money to get some sort of structure developed.
Yes, there is.
And you said you also provide other services. So once, let's say I have a small business and I don't know anything about payroll. So can you handle that?
Yes, we go through and we help people with payroll from I only have one employee, or I did open up I did start my business as a corporation or an LLC, and I want to bring my wife on as an employee. Whatever that is, from 1 to 200, 300 employees for bigger businesses, we are able to go through. We automate your payroll. We can do direct deposit for your employees.
Wow.
There's many things that payroll is just one big monster by itself.
And then there's so many things that can go wrong if you do it yourself, especially if you start adding benefits in there and so forth.
And start adding benefits, but the biggest issue I usually see is when people don't even understand the requirements of filing reports, of paying their payroll tax liabilities, who it goes to, how often it goes out, and what are the expectations of you as the business owner from whichever taxing entity, whether it's the state or the IRS. And that's a lot of things. Those are the things that business owners don't even know. I mean, you never know that, by the way, my Form 941 is due when and how often and things like that. You know, that we guide people, we basically take over and say, we will do this for you, we'll do this for you, and we explain to them, we help them understand why we do what we do and for which taxing entity all the things that we're required to file.
And that could be a really big headache for a small business owner. That's probably one of the biggest headaches is doing the business payroll, and it's good to see that you offer those services. And you know, I've even known people who don't even know what deductions are taken out of their paychecks, or they don't even take a look at their paycheck stub. They just take it for granted, this is what I get paid, and they don't realize what taxes they're contributing to, or to whom, or deductions are being taken out.
People don't understand what FICA is, they don't understand what federal income tax withheld is, how it gets applied from their W-2.
Or how it's calculated, or things like that.
Exactly, and so those are the things that, one, we can help them with it, we can teach them how to do it. There's so many different avenues. I mean, there's payroll service companies out there. I even know of banks that start to do that now.
Right.
And for those that use banks, my suggestion to you is that you really got to follow up on the reporting side of them.
Right.
Because I have known many a times when we get called into audits for clients, they were using those avenues, and we had to go back through and catch up on reports that were never filed.
Wow. Okay. And so you offer that type of consulting services, and you offer payroll, but you also help them with the record keeping of the business, correct?
Yes, we also do the bookkeeping part of the business. And the bookkeeping, as we talked about in the last show, the bookkeeping part, I think it's very essential. And what a lot of people don't understand as small business owners, the IRS, there is a section in the code that requires you to keep record keeping and proper record keeping. And what I tell people is, when people look back and why, I'm not obligated. Oh, yes, you are. And so I think that's one of the things that most businesses don't understand, how important it is. And it can be as simple as just keeping track of things on an Excel spreadsheet, using another program, using an online program. There's so many different programs you can use nowadays with computers. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
Do you still get those clients who bring you a shoebox in with receipts and tell you to organize it? I had plenty of those clients.
And we still do, and we give them the look that just says, okay. We're straightening this out, but we're going to get you, this is a teaching moment. How do we get you to do this better?
But it could be a costly teaching moment, because the more work you have for us, I mean, the bigger the fee is going to be.
They'll figure it out after the first bill.
You either pay me now or you pay me later,
That's
right?
It. That's it.
Do you also do like reviews, like with small businesses? Like if I had a small business and I wanted you to review my office manager's work, would you be willing to do that? You know, to make sure that that individual is handling those areas correctly?
We kind of, and that's kind of, I guess, for us, some of the specialty stuff that we'll do. I've had people that have called me in, have a discussion about this and this with my employees, and you know, just specialty stuff that normally most bookkeepers, accountants don't do.
Correct.
But because of our vast, you know, experiences over the years, we're more than welcome to go through and do something like that. I'll sit down with clients and tell them, let's review your financials and let's review what they mean,
Right.
not just the numbers.
Sure.
But I go through and explain to them the difference. The balance sheet is probably the most misunderstood, I think, report that any business owner
Right.
looks at, and they don't get that. And so those are the things that we go through and we try to explain to them how one relates to the other and what we need to do to continue to make the business more profitable.
Yeah, one of the things that I would see with a lot of small business owners is the lack of them understanding those financial statements, especially the income statement or the profit and loss statement. And they come up with a profit, or what we call net income, and let's say they had a net income of $10,000. Well, they're saying, where's that $10,000?
Yes.
How come that isn't my cash
Yeah.
that I have on hand? And they don't understand the relation and how it all works. And especially when you have inventory involved,
Yes.
that creates a little bit more of a headache.
Inventory, or you have payables, or you're paying on a note.
Right.
I bought a truck for the business, and so you're right. Where's my $10,000?
Right,
Always
where's it
the
tied up?
question.
Where's it tied up? And how come I don't have that $10,000 in my checking account?
Exactly, and they don't want to pay tax on that $10,000
Right.
and stuff. But that's what's real important, is explaining them the difference in how the accounts relate to each one of those reports.
Right.
And I think on the financial statements.
And as far as, do you help them with accounts payable and accounts receivable management? Because sometimes if a business is owed money, they might not know the proper way to invoice or to collect, or they get too old and they never wind up collecting this money, and then they fall behind on their vendor payments.
What we do is, when we go in and we'll have conversations with them, start with the accounts receivable and the way that they're actually allowing credit and the way they're signing.
Right.
And so basically what we'll do is I'll go in there and we'll explain to them the concept accounts receivables, 0 to 20 days, 0 to 30 days, and how important it is to be collecting
Right.
on that. Once you're way beyond 90 days, just the percentage of collectability at that point is what do they need to be
Right,
doing.
increases.
And understand, where I see, it's amazing to me where I really, really see on the receivable side a big failure to collect on receivables is in the medical industry. Doctors, physicians, and you go into their offices, and I am amazed at the amount of money that a lot of those are owed in receivables. And so a lot of times what I try to do, we will not go out and go collect
Right.
for you. But what I do is put them in charge of, or connect them with a company that actually does
Right.
that and stuff, and that will collect,
And,
because
you
need a
with
professional for that.
with a lot of these programs, they're even able to age your
yeah.
accounts receivable and accounts payable. And I think as a small business owner, you need to see how past due your accounts
Exactly.
receivable and payable are, because all in all, business operates on what? Cash.
Exactly.
And if you don't have the cash coming in, you're not going to have the cash going out for your vendors or for your employees or even for yourself.
Exactly. And I think small businesses need to understand that. I learned long time ago, it doesn't count as a sale until the money's in the
Right.
register. I said you can write up as much business as you want on as a receivable.
Sure.
But until you get paid for it, it doesn't really count.
Right, cash flow is still king.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, it
well,
is.
this has been an interesting half to discuss with you regarding small business topics. We're going to come back the second half and talk a little bit more about employment law and maybe some of the audits that these small businesses are subject to. So we'll see you again in the second part of Making Sense. Welcome to the second half of Making Sense. And I'm here with John Romero, who is the owner of Romero Consulting. And we've been talking about a lot of interesting business topics. And, one of the things that I see small businesses, and not just small businesses, but even bigger sized businesses dealing with, is the misclassification of employees. And we have what we call an employee, and an independent contractor. So, and some people don't know about this, and can you explain a little bit on that?
I think what I see as the biggest misclassification is between the difference between a W-2 employee and what we call a 1099 contractor. The state of Texas and the Internal Revenue Service, they have like a 30-point list of what defines one over the other.
Right.
And the way you try to break it down is simple: time, resource, and financial, and what you're doing.
Right.
And so if you're to take an employee, a great example of a contractor, at my business, if something happens, let's say for instance the sink in the kitchen goes out at my office,
Right.
and I need somebody to fix it, I'm going to get on the phone, I'm going to go call a plumber, and I'm going to have him fix it. He's going to come in when he's ready to come in, which fits into his
Right.
schedule, so he controls his time. The second part is when he shows up, he's in his vehicle, not in mine, and he's using his tools, not mine. So now he controls his resources. And the third item, and which is probably the biggest one, is he gets to give me a bill for whatever it costs.
Correct.
I don't get to tell him, I'm only going to give you $9 an hour.
Right.
Because if I tell him that, he's probably going to turn right back around and say, see you later.
Right.
So the idea is he controls the actual financial side of it that says, here's your invoice, John, for $85. Thank you very much.
Right.
So in that case, he is a 1099 contractor.
So a lot of it relates to the control
Bingo.
that one entity has over another entity.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you're an independent contractor to your businesses
Yes.
because you're not an employee of them,
Exactly.
because they don't tell you how you're supposed to do things, and you provide your own knowledge, your own software, your
Exactly.
own expertise, your own time, your own resources.
Exactly. And so we'll bill out our clients based off of those exact topics. As far as a W-2 employee, if you're going to say, you know what, you need to come in here, you're working 9 to 5 this week, or you're giving them a schedule, or you're telling them this is what you're going to do, time-wise, one, as an employer, you're controlling their time.
Right.
The second thing, they're coming to my office and they're going to start working. They're inputting, they're doing something, they're answering phones.
They're using your equipment.
They're using everything that's my resources.
Right.
The third part is I'm telling them I'm going to pay you X amount an hour. So if I'm paying you $10 an hour, I'm controlling the financial side also. So they have to be classified as a W-2
Or you're
employee.
also providing their training too.
Exactly. And if you're providing training and the knowledge of all those resources, then yes, then you're responsible for that.
So why do businesses want to misclassify? Why is it that they want to do this?
The biggest reason businesses will misclassify is because of the tax, the tax component to all of this. They don't want to pay the Social Security and Medicare. They don't want to be responsible for withholding the federal income tax withheld, and they don't want to be paying the Texas unemployment part of that also.
Right.
As a business owner, on average, your half of Social Security and Medicare is 7.65%.
Correct.
Starting off as a new business, you're paying 2.7% of unemployment tax, plus kick on another percent for the federal unemployment. So as a business owner, about 11, almost 12% of that individual's salary
Goes to taxes.
So if I go ahead and I'm saying, you know what, Nino, I'm just going to pay you as a 1099, I'm going to give you $10 an hour, and you're a contractor. And at $10 an hour, now I've pushed the whole burden of taxes onto you when you go do your tax
Yeah,
return.
but then what happens is I've seen a lot of individuals who come in with just one 1099, which indicates they're more of an employee than an independent contractor. Then you prepare their taxes, and they owe this much money.
Exactly.
And they get upset because they say, how come I was not being withheld any taxes?
I agree, and I think that I really think they do injustice to those individuals when they misclassify them. If you're the individual that's happening to, you have a couple of avenues. The IRS has a program out there where you can get them, you can actually as an individual get that company reported to the IRS that says, take a look at the way they pay us and have that reclassified.
Right.
And the IRS will take a look. And I've had clients and I've had individuals where we've done that for them, where, you know what, this is totally wrong. And so I've seen it on both ends of it where it's
And I'm
not
sure
right.
the penalties and the back taxes, then that becomes a really big burden for that employer.
And very much so. Very much so. It really adds up. That's
So,
for sure.
so the TWC, and that stands for Texas Workforce Commission, who's in charge of the unemployment taxes here in Texas.
Yes, sir.
So they're also concerned about this, correct?
I would say the Texas Workforce Commission is stronger on collecting. My experience has been they're stronger on collecting those taxes than the Internal Revenue Service is.
Really?
And the only reason why is the expectation out of the Internal Revenue Service is we think you're telling us the truth when you list them as a contract labor. That's it. They're not going to really, unless you're tied up in an audit,
right.
And within the audit, the scope of that audit, there's more issues that go to that. They're really not going to go through and say, hey, we think this guy has contract labor. The Texas Workforce Commission has a lot more at stake, even though it's a lower dollar amount. They have a lot more at stake as far as losing money when it comes to actual tax dollars.
And one of the things that I always tell small businesses is that the chances of you getting audited by the IRS are slim, but the chances of you getting audited by a state agency, you will.
Yeah.
Because I think the TWC, Texas Workforce Commission, and the State Comptroller's Office, I think they put everybody on a rotating list that you must go through an audit every now and then, correct?
For the most part, they both have their own cycles of what
right.
they do it, and the type of industry or business that you are goes and dictates to them how often they do want to audit you. And what I tell people is to understand is when you have the difference between a W-2 and a 1099 individual, imagine if you're paying somebody, if I'm paying you as a contractor,
right.
but you're really a W-2 employee, and for some reason you and I don't click one day and you walk out and say, I don't want to work for this guy anymore. You go down to the Texas Workforce Commission and you go file an unemployment claim. And they're going to go through, they're going to look it up, and they're going to say, you're going to tell them this is the name of the employer, this is the guy I work for. They're going to look it up, they're going to look at your name, and they're not going to see unemployment taxes paid on your behalf. Sure. So to them, that automatically sends a red flag, and it goes to a department that says, we need to have a conversation with John, the employer, because he's not paying unemployment taxes. They'll continue the conversation with you to allow you to get your benefits,
right.
But now they're going to start looking for me, the employer, to say, we want to audit your books and we want to see what you're doing in the world of how you're paying these people.
Right.
And this is when you you need to explain the process, and you have to go substantiate the time, the resources, the financial side of it, and how you do that. Correct. And I've seen it over and over again, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in past taxes that people have to come up and pay.
You know, that issue of 1099 contractors and W-2 employees, whether you're an independent contractor or an employee, it really is a big issue, and a lot of individuals get hurt, especially the ones that are being misclassified. And, you know, I wish businesses would take a look at that more closely, yeah. Or at least ask somebody to see if they're classifying them correctly.
It's that simple.
I think you can even ask the IRS to give you a direct classification whether that individual is an employee or an independent contractor.
It's that simple, and I can tell you almost all the time, you can call the IRS, you can call the Texas Workforce Commission, you can call my office. I'll spend the time. It doesn't bother me to get somebody on the right track, because I see the other end of it when the employer has to pay back taxes, interest, and penalty that go with all that. Now, and that's not a pretty picture.
Now, you said that you also provide payroll services, but do you also see with a lot of small businesses the issue of not paying appropriate overtime?
Oh, we see that also. People think that, you know what, if I tell you I'm going to pay you $400 a week, that's a salary employee. So you work as many hours as possible.
But it's really an hourly employee.
Yeah, and you're an hourly employee. That's not the case. You can't do that.
Or you call somebody an office manager, and just because they're a manager,
yeah.
You think they're exempt from overtime,
Exactly.
but they're not. The title doesn't mean anything. It's what they're doing.
There is a minimum pay level that the IRS has dictated out there that you have to pay an individual before you can say they are a salary employee. And that's the biggest part that people don't get. People don't want to pay. It's, I believe, $596 a week now.
Right.
And I believe most people don't want to get to that. They'd rather, I'll pay you $10 an hour and you work as many hours as possible because the calculation's easy.
Or they give you, like I said, the title, and you know. But if you don't have any decision-making authority, if you don't have the power to hire or fire or make decisions, then you're probably an hourly employee and not at a management level where you would be considered salary.
Exactly. And those are when you see cases like that where, again, the disgruntled employee finally gets tired of working 55, 60 hours a week for the same pay,
Right.
and they end up quitting, and then they go to the Department of Labor and say, hey, this is what's been happening. And all of a sudden, the employer is looking at a full-blown audit.
Or they look at a show like this, and it starts them to get thinking about that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you know, this is valuable information, not just for small businesses, but also for individuals, for them to know a little bit about their paycheck and how they're getting paid and how their time is being calculated, because the financial literacy out there is really very low, especially with our young kids and high schoolers and college kids. They need to know a lot of these things.
Exactly. I can tell you most kids, especially in college, don't understand what their paycheck, what's the whole significance of their paycheck.
Right.
And what does it all mean? How does it affect, now with the advent of Obamacare and all that, how does that relate to now this is part of the calculation of the household? What does that mean for my tax return? What does that mean for my parents' tax return? It's just a bigger picture.
Right.
And a lot of these younger individuals just don't understand that. They just think, I get my money, I spend my money, and I'll go on the internet and I'll do my own tax return.
And you know, we learn our money skills from usually our parents, and those could be good or they could be bad. Well, time just flew. I mean, we had so many interesting topics to talk about, and I hope we can have you again on another show at a later date, and hope you're willing to come back and talk about some more small business topics. Thank you for taking time of your day to be on the show, and good luck with those small business development classes that are coming up for the tax preparers, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, John, and thank you for another edition of Making Sense.